If you look at my work, the first few years I was very enchanted with living in such an old place. I was enchanted by the mix of Jews and Arabs. I was enchanted by the ancient architecture. And, uh, and so I made very sweet, pretty pictures about Jerusalem. And I think that as I'm getting older, I'm much more aware of, and being the mother of 3 daughters and 2 sons, especially the daughters, and being Orthodox, I'm concerned. I'm really concerned about the labels and the extremism. And I'm very much concerned about issues of fertility and the pressures to have children. And so all of a sudden, my work has gone, I think, from being pretty colorful things you want to hang on the wall to perhaps not so pretty things that you probably don't want to hang on the wall. But it's much more compelling for me as an artist, this kind of work. A lot of the work that I do deals with issues that women struggle with. And even though the ordeal of the sotah is no longer enacted, it's one of those thorny issues in the Tanakh that no one has ever properly explained. And so this piece deals with this pretty much horrible ritual that they did, in which a woman accused of committing adultery is taken before the Kohanim. Her hair is uncovered, curses are written out, they're torn to pieces and thrown on the floor, they're swept back up with the dirt from the floor, they're put into water, and she's meant to drink this. And if she's innocent, then her reward is that nothing happens and she bears a male child. And if she's guilty, her stomach distends, her flesh falls from her, and all of this happens while she's standing in front of the Kohanim. And so what I did is I embedded between 2 layers of very, very transparent paper, hair, letters from the Parsha, and dirt. And then I very painstakingly hand-stitched all the edges. I put it in a vitrine because in this whole ordeal, she's very much on display. Basically, she's got a whole group of men, Kohanim, watching her body to see if anything happens. And in this case, I have a case in which it's glass on all 4 sides because she has nowhere to hide. This is fairly typical of the kind of work I do, and we can go up to my studio now and see the rest. I don't know even where to start here. So this piece was part of the Tear Repair show at Brandeis. The vest of the Baal Tzedakah, the vest of the giver of charity. I started to think about what it means to give tzedakah, and I went to the Tanakh and I researched like what it means to open your hand to your needy brother, and I thought, wow, hands. Here in Jerusalem, there's chamsas everywhere. And that's sort of what gave me the idea of creating this garment that's full of pockets, but the pockets are hands. They're very Yerushalmi, but at the same time, they're open hands that are requesting something. And so the whole pasuk about being the obligation to give to your needy brother is wrapped around the vest. But then hanging off of the vest are all these tags. The Kitzur Shulchan Aruch lists the sort of the hierarchy of your obligations, of who you must give to. The orphan, the widow, the Talmud scholar, the poor of your city, the poor of Jerusalem, the non-Jewish poor. And there's a whole hierarchy that they tell you. This is the order of who you give your money to and how. So they are literally hanging off of this Baal Tzedakah, totally dependent on his generosity. But then inside the vest, sitting on the back of the wearer, is this part of the Tanakh. It says, you give to them, they gather it in. You open your hand, they are sated with good. Because I think there's a tendency to think it's my money, it's my giving, it's entirely in my hands. And this is just that sort of last little smack on the back, which says, don't forget where everything comes from. Because I do all of my etching downtown at the Jerusalem Print Workshop, it's right at the center of Mea Sharim. So when I go out to do errands and things like that, I'm wandering through the streets of Mea Sharim, and I kept seeing tables set up with old Sfarim, valuable old books, piled up. Some of them looked really old. They would be sitting in the rain, in the dust, in the wind, And I thought that that was very bizarre, because I thought that somehow in my mind, Mea Sharim should be a very holy area where people find these books sacred. And I kept thinking, I wonder what would happen if I went up and with a pile of these and tried to buy them from one of these Hasidic men. And this is how I buy them. I mean, it's very troubling, but this is the way I find them on the street. No dates. Here. Printed in Poland, 1934. Think about what was happening in Poland in 1934. I would say there's about 7 or 8 different old sidurs combined here. Some of these are 100 years old. Some of them are 30 years old. Some of these sidurs say Vilna, Warsaw inside, which means that somebody brought these from very far away, and that somebody is gone, most likely. And it troubled me greatly that this sidur was sitting by the side of the road, in Mea Sharim. So part of me feels like I've done kind of a tikkun with these old books. This piece it's about a bunch of different things. It's about me as a modern woman buying these old books and deciding to make art out of them. It's about the Jewish response to a suicide vest, because a suicide vest is basically a vest that contains as many sharp pieces of metal to hurt as many people as possible. And those are the ultimate tools of the terrorist. To my thinking, the ultimate Jewish tools are words, paper, and string. I mean, that's who we are. We wrap the Torah. We bind tefillin. We roll mezuzot. We're very much about wrapping and binding, and about words and paper. And so I think that whenever tragedy befalls the Jewish people, Orthodox people certainly recite Psalms. We pray. That's what we do. So this is a Jewish response to a violent suicide vest, but at the same time, it's also about the power of communal prayer, because Judaism very much values community, and we very much put precedence on everyone praying together. Not that you go off and meditate alone on a mountainside, but that there's more power when we're all together. And so in this instance, I've kind of taken all these wayward books and transformed them, hopefully, into something very powerful, given them a second life, just like the coats of the agunot that I do. I got permission from the Jewish National Library. They really didn't understand what I was going to do until it was all over, but I said, I would like permission to duplicate your antique ketubah collection. I digitally reproduced on archival paper about 150 of their antique ketubahs. And then, as a metaphor for the state of her marriage, I tore them to pieces. I then took each piece and sewed each piece, because every word of that ketubah is binding her and trapping her at this point. And then I reassembled them into these coats, but the coats are sewn shut. At the bottom, the sleeve. She's totally trapped by this piece of paper. I left all the threads hanging because she's hanging. And I deliberately made this out of paper because it's paper that traps her ketubah, and it's paper that she's waiting for her get to release her from this. These ketubahs came in huge range of tones. The ones from Arab countries, those ketubah tended to be very colorful, reds and blues and maroons. And then the European ones, the German and the Austrian ones, or the poorer ones, tended to be black and white. And so, as an artist, I had the prerogative of dividing all the colors up in the ways that I wanted to work with them. So, and in some ways, I find this one the stronger one, because I think that this travesty is black and white. There's just no two ways about it. Like what this injustice that's done to her it's so obvious. One of the things I'm trying to do is to do art that is visually seductive. In other words, you're very attracted to it, you want to see it, and then you come up and say, well, wait a minute, what is that? What is she saying? And then you're either repelled, or you're angered, or you're like, oh my God, I didn't know that. And you leave being, a little more informed, or a little more upset, or a little more aware of something. Because I do think that the apathy about a lot of these subjects is what allows it to take over. And I think we need to know.